Still
Oh,
6:30.
so
We're
far.
recording. Please go.
Thanks so much. So far, it's still 6:30. All
Oh,
right, it is, and Counselor Canna Martin's in the attendees. Thank you. So it is 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday, February 24th, 2026, and I'm going to oh my God, this GOL meeting to order. Awesome, thank you. Uh, at 6:30. I already said that part. Seriously, the two committee meetings in a day does a doozy. All right, I'm going to check in with everybody to make sure they can hear and be heard. Let's start with Lynn Griesmer.
Present.
Thank you. Counselor Ryan.
I'm here.
Thank you. Counselor Lord.
Present.
Excellent. Welcome. And Counselor Cano Martin.
present.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Um, all right. So I'm getting everything, make sure I got everything rolling here. We're going to start off with general public comment. Public comments on matters within the jurisdiction of the committee are welcome at this time. Residents are welcome to express their views for up to 3 minutes, and we will not engage in a dialogue or comment on a matter raised during public comment. And I will check the audience now to see if we have anyone who would like to make public comment. Dun, dun, dun. We have one attendee at this point. All right, moving on. So we are going to move through. We've got a variety of items in front of us today. We had been working on the bylaw review committee charge, if folks recall back. So we're going to move to that, and I'm going to pull it up. If you give me one moment, please. While you refresh your memory. Actually, I might propose shifting because I believe our audience member is here to learn more about HRC. So if folks are okay with it, I'd like to move to the human rights bylaw first. And Ronnie, if you have anything that you'd like to add for context to this, please feel free I don't know, are you still co-chair? I cannot remember, of the Human Rights Commission. Um, Go ahead, Ronnie. If you're welcome to introduce
Okay.
yourself and welcome and thanks for
Um,
coming. I don't mean to put you
sure.
on the spot. You don't have to speak if you don't want to.
No, I'm actually just following up on the bylaw. I
Yeah.
think from our point of view, we're not sure what's left to be done. Um, it's been reviewed by KP Law. We've had multiple conversations with them. As far as I know, we have accommodated everything they've asked for. In fact, to be honest, it's gone on since before I joined the Human Rights Commission. Um, and it's been vetted thoroughly by KP Law in meetings with the town manager. So I really don't see why it's come back to you. At the last meeting at the town council, there were questions raised that I did not understand, not being a lawyer. They had to do with, why is this in the purpose section? Don't you want it in another section? And honestly, we were all there. None of us knew what difference it made which section it was in, and probably there's a legal reason for it. But from our point of view, all the content is there, and we're ready to go with it. So I think the council just needs to vote. If there's an issue, if there's a reason why it's been sent back to the GOL, we want to know. And what we said then, which I would say now, if you are going back to KP Law, then we want to be present so we can hear what the questions are that are being asked and be able to give our input so we don't have to keep going back and forth.
Thank you. And I think just to clarify, I don't know that had it ever come to GOL before. Because I
I
don't
have
think
no
that
idea.
yeah, I don't think it's coming back to GOL. I think it's coming to GOL for the first time as part of the process. So for what it's worth, it would have to come to us at some point anyway. And
Okay,
I know
great.
that so I know that this has taken a while to get through the process, and I appreciate your patience. So I'm going to put up the document on the screen and we can discuss it. Um, and this is the memo that we got from Paul. Um, Sorry, I'm looking up to my second screen here. So, as a reminder, the referral to us, I believe, if I'm correct, and I look to other council members to correct me, my notes on the referral to GOL was that this is not just a clarity, consistency, actionability review. This is a substantive review. And so we're looking at this from all perspectives, including clarity, consistency, and actionability. That's part of our responsibility. So as a reminder, the council motion is to essentially repeal and replace, rescind and adopt the old version with the new version. And in this memo, there's the current human rights bylaw and the new human rights bylaw. Ronnie, could you give us a little bit of, oh, sorry, go ahead, Amber. Oh, you're muted.
Oh, can you zoom in just a little bit more? Sorry.
Absolutely. No worries. No worries. Is that better? Ronnie, could you give us a little bit of background as to what the intention is with the new bylaw in the first place?
Okay, the intent, I think, because again, this started way back, years before I even joined the commission.
Just a moment while Ronnie rejoins as a panelist.
Sorry.
Okay. If you look at the old version here, you just starting with gender identity, you see already that that's a very limited definition of human rights. And if you look at the corresponding proposed new version, you'll see definitions that are much more inclusive. Like if you look here, there's a purpose statement. The definitions are what are human rights? What's a complaint? Because people are allowed to make complaints through to the Human Rights Commission. And some of the other language that just makes it a lot more clearer and current. I think maybe when the commission was founded, I'm not sure, there was more of a concern about gender rights. And so the original version focused more on those. And beyond that, I'm not completely sure what, I think a lot of it was clarification. Oh, and the second part was outlining more clearly the process of filing a complaint and what the Human Rights Commission could do. So the procedures that you see here, I'm not sure if it's called procedures or, it does tell you have to go, that your complaint goes through the DEI office and that the DEI director is also the human rights director. So I think these are among the more significant changes. And really the DEI director reviews the complaint, tries to talk to the parties and help them come to mutual agreement. They don't always come to agreements. Sometimes one party doesn't want to talk, and sometimes one party, they just agree to disagree. So our complaint mechanism is limited as far as the confidential mechanism, and that's all that this addresses more clearly, which was not there before. So I think that's the other big change that I can think of. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head that's a big change.
Great. Apologize, my internet is doing the things again. Apparently have issues today and yesterday. So I'm going to turn my video off for the time being to see if that helps. Let's start with any counselor questions for Ronnie. And Ronnie, I appreciate you being here to answer these. I know we weren't able to have a conversation before the meeting, so I appreciate you being here. But are there any questions for Ronnie? Anybody? All right, go ahead, Lynn.
Ronnie, one of the things, as I recall, that was discussed with the town attorney was whether or not by revising the bylaw, we were opening up the liability of the town in areas in which we have no control. And I don't know if you could speak to that.
Well, again, I have to remind you, I'm not a lawyer. When you talk about human rights, you are opening up a can of worms because it's human rights. But I think we're very, very clear about the limited extent of our actions, our ability to act. And in fact, the discussion amongst commission members itself was focused more on, wait, we don't seem to have any power here to really do anything. So I think that the DEI director in particular was very careful to make sure that when we said we would do something, that we could in fact do it. So when you look at the complaints, which is, we're very careful to say that we're not going to guarantee any kind of resolution. We're just going to guarantee that we'll look into it and we would be willing to facilitate a conference. We don't even say that you will get, oh my God, my mind is blanking, forgive me, but mediation is the word. We're not even guaranteeing mediation. We're not guaranteeing anything really. So some of us think that it's very weak, and we've figured out some other ways to deal with that in terms of our plan of action. But the bylaws, again, as a non-lawyer, I don't see any real exposure. The only issue that, I don't even see it here. Where's our mission statement? Yeah. The only issue that the lawyers raised was that they didn't want to say in our mission statement to ensure that no power goes unchecked and that all citizens are afforded equal protection under the law. And I think commission members really, that's where they would draw the line. I mean, we accepted dozens of other changes that they recommended that actually many of us were not happy with. But that's where I think people really drew the line, because it's clearly an aspirational statement. It's our mission. It's not what we're going to do, but it's, it's the idea that we have behind our work a commitment to not let violations of human rights just go by without being addressed. So that's the only thing I can think of. I don't know what liability lies in that, but that was the only area where we said, the lawyer's a mission statement is not the kind of thing that a lawyer can tell you about, because a mission statement is who you are. It's not literally what you do. They can correct our procedures. But if you go to a chess group and say, well, chess cannot be in your mission, what's the point? So that's the only one of the discussions I've been part of. That's the only one that was questioned. The other issue was, there was something else, but it was small and we agreed, we resolved.
So I just want to pursue this a little further, because let me start with the nucleus called the government of the town of Amherst. Okay. If we have the government of the town of Amherst, and the government of the town of Amherst does something wrong, okay, and there's a complaint, that seems to me to be totally within the purview of the Human Rights Commission. And then let's expand to the town, okay? There's parts of the town that are not under the government of the town of Amherst. And we have no control over them. And we have no control and we have no jurisdiction or any power or resources, if you will, to correct or force some other organization to do something differently. Let me use an example. Suppose there's a nonprofit in the town of Amherst, and that nonprofit denies somebody access for some reason, okay? Is that the business of the town of Amherst?
Well, sorry, I want to be sure you're finished.
So no, I mean, and then I would expand larger. go to the county, go to the state, go to the federal government. And there's agencies, for instance, if a state agency denies some kind of service to an individual in Amherst, is that the job of the town of Amherst to take that up?
Ronnie,
That's where my questions lie.
Mhm.
Ronnie, do you want to
I
respond?
think, yeah, well, I think we're very clear that we're not taking responsibility for what we are, for what, sticking with your example of the nonprofit. Our focus is more that if I try to go to a nonprofit, and since I know a little bit about food, let's say I'm hungry and I go someplace where there's supposed to be free food and they don't like the way I dress or the way I smell, and they say, sorry, you cannot come in. We believe I ought to have a right to go somewhere and say, look, this agency has denied me food, even though they're advertising that they're giving food. That's what we emphasize, that I have to have a place to go and talk about it. So the DI office, or the DI director, who's the human rights director, who is also a lawyer, will tell you, okay, well, let's talk to them and bring them and you together and find out what happened. And they can talk to each other. And in some cases, we have come to good resolution. I'm not personally involved in these complaints because they're supposed to be 100% confidential. And so members of the commission do not get involved at all. We don't know who's complaining about whom. There was one case where I did get involved, and it was because there was no other staff and the DEI office, and it required a significant amount of work. There was literally no town staff to help the DEI director. And so I and Liz Haygood, who were co-chairs at the time, came to know of it. But it was good for us because we saw that it's very clear from the beginning that the focus is really on having a place to go to complain. It's not the place for resolution. And that's also stated very clearly several times in the course of this discussion. We would like to make, if you want to resolve, and there was a case, in fact, where somebody filed a complaint. There were more than one case. And the person was shocked that they had offended this other person, and they apologized immediately and changed their behavior. So it's really to allow for that kind of thing to happen. It's not, we don't promise anything except listening, and we're very clear that we cannot, even if somebody agrees to change an action or a practice, we cannot compel them to actually do it. So they can come and talk about it and say, yeah, okay, from now on, I'm allowing all Black people to enter my restaurant. But, we cannot guarantee that we will do that, that they will do that, and we cannot enforce it. I don't see how it's so meek that I don't know what, as long as we follow the procedures, which we do with great care, like everything else, the town has to follow its rules.
So,
none of us see any liability in such actions. It's giving voice to people.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Sorry, is that too long?
No, you're fine. I just want to make sure. I think I'm going to go to Counselor Ryan in a moment. I think part of what is challenging here is that there is, as folks have talked about, there's a lot of lead up to this coming to us that we aren't necessarily versed on. And this is also functioning differently than other commissions and committees and the like. And so I think it's really helpful to understand the role of the HRC. And I think I was looking prior to the meeting, I was looking at some other communities' models, and that helped me to get an understanding at least how they function. And but I think that I can imagine GOL will have some more kind of rudimentary questions, and it might be helpful for us to compile those and ask if Paul can get some answers for us from the DEI director, or if he has answers as well. And I'm happy to compile those at this meeting. But let's go to Counselor. I want to kind of preface this by saying there aren't any bad questions at this point. I think we're all catching up on this particular piece. So, Counselor Ryan.
Yeah, I think there may be some misunderstanding or lack of understanding about what GOL is supposed to do. And it does take a fair amount of time. This is a document that's now twice the length of the document that it's going to replace. So that right away is something that's going to require some careful look on the part of just the committee in terms of clarity, consistency, and actionability. There are also some substance issues questions. They seem primarily to resolve around the issue of liability. It's unfortunate that we don't know. So in the memo from the manager, it says that that certain language was proposed. There was discussion about language with the attorney, and some suggestions were accepted and some were not. But we have no idea what those are.
Yeah, I don't either.
It's unfortunate, excuse me. It's unfortunate that we don't have some kind of document from somebody that shows what changes were made. So we're completely at sea. We have no idea. Liability is a serious matter. We can't have a bylaw that exposes the town to liability. And the attorneys are concerned about it. The other thing I'll point out in the memo from the manager, besides the fact that some language is suggested and some was accepted and some was not, the other point he makes is that the council, he recommends the council should meet with the town attorney to consider all legal issues and concerns. So that's coming from the town manager. So those are, things we're going to have to look at. We're going to have to look at carefully. We're also going to have to look at this carefully. We usually go through it line by line, and I assume that's what we're going to do here as well. I don't know if we'll start tonight, but we will at some point. So I'm sorry that things don't go as quickly as you would like, but we have a very serious responsibility and we take it seriously. So that's just something I want to try and make clear. I don't know if the manager can get us information about what language is incorporated into this and what was not in terms of legal concerns. That may be something we want to ask him for, but we have a fair amount of work ahead of us with this document.
Thanks, George. And I'll clarify. I think the frustration with the length isn't with us as much as it was prior to it coming to us. It had been provided a long time ago to the town, and I think there are, as we know, many things going along. But we will absolutely take the time that we need to get through this thoroughly and with care. I have a rudimentary question, and I apologize if this is a stupid question. And Ronnie, I don't know if this is to you or to Athena or to anybody. I'm curious why it is that the HR essentially charge is in the bylaws versus being a separate document. Can someone explain that to me? Oh, did I freeze and lost my great question?
You did for a second. It sounded like your question was why is the charge part of the bylaw?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, so the bylaw established the Human Rights Commission. It's just a different way of doing it. It was in the previous form of government when that happened. Maybe, Ronnie, do you have more to add?
No, I'm sorry. I actually have no idea. I also said exactly what the town manager said at the last town council meeting, which is that questions really of your group and the town council should go to our town lawyers, because we don't know the technicalities of the issues you're struggling with and that you have to resolve. And we're open to having it discussed. In fact, we're very pleased that it's finally getting to the GOL. I didn't realize it hadn't gotten to this stage before, because it's taken years since we all agreed just to do this. So you should do your work and we support you in that. And we understand that it's complex and that for us, this is important. We want to be clear that town council is on board with whatever it is that the Human Rights Commission is charged with doing.
So thank you both. I think one of my questions then, or follow-up questions to that. And I've just started compiling a list of questions for Paul because it sounds like that's kind of going to be one of our first steps here. But one of my questions that I'd like to ask is, we have a new form of government now. I understand that we established the HRC. What Athena's saying is we established the HRC through a bylaw, and we talk about consistency a lot. Is this an opportunity to shift this to be a charge versus a bylaw? That would bring it in line with our other commissions. That would bring it into, I feel like, the appropriate category. And maybe this is small and semantic, but it does feel like this is an odd pullout, and I think changes the review process, right? So we need 2 readings of a bylaw. If this isn't our bylaw, we need 2 readings of the charge. So I would like to ask if it's possible to pull this out from being a bylaw and have it be a commission charge, which is in essence what it is. I also think that it doesn't change the importance of a legal review and all of that, but it does shift the scrutiny a little bit on it from being, again, part of our bylaw to being a committee charge that's able to be reviewed and amended, I think, a bit easier as needed. Does anyone have any thoughts on that, or if that's a good thing to try to do, or a bad thing to try to do, or a doable thing to do?
I raised my hand to speak to that, but Lynn, if you're going to speak to that thing, then that exact thing, go ahead.
No, that was not what my intention was. Why don't you go ahead, Amber?
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I just was wondering, so there is part of it that's a charge, and then there's another part that seems more procedural about how to make a complaint. So I feel like that part wouldn't fit in a charge. So if it weren't to be in a charge, then where else could that go? Would be my question.
I think it still could be in the charge, or it could be just in the information that the committee determines, which I think also would allow possibly, and again, I'm looking at this can of worms as I'm opening it, but like if we take the procedure out of the charge, which I'm not totally convinced on yet, but then the committee could determine the appropriate procedure versus it having to go through a full council reading every time, I think. I think about this in, like, we have the Conservation Commission. They have regulations that they uphold. They have a process that folks go through for permitting. All of that is through their website and through like their internal processes. So I could see it going one of 2 ways. Either we keep it in the charge and the council keeps kind of that oversight on what the process is through approval of the charge, or it shifts to just being a policy within the commission, right? I'm hoping someone will stop me if I'm going off base, but I think I'm
No,
right.
I think it's a good question for our legal counsel,
Yeah.
if it makes sense to establish this with a charge and then ask the commission or the council to establish policy and procedure regarding complaints versus doing this as a bylaw.
I
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Len.
I actually will speak to this now. It seems to me we may actually have 3 documents in one. One is a bylaw that creates a commission. Another one is a charge of that commission. And the third is a policy of the commission in terms of how it proceeds. So, but it's all thrown into one document. And so that's one of the questions, is whether that needs to be. But I had originally raised my hand to say, what I think is most important for our committee tonight is to decide how we want to proceed with this, which I think clearly includes, in my mind, not just talking to the town manager, but through the town manager, asking that for the head of DEI to be part of a meeting, and also legal counsel to be part of a meeting along with the Human Rights Commission, because as Anna, you so absolutely stated, there's a whole lot of history that came before this that we're not privy to, but now it's our job to sort through it. The other piece is that, and I, again, I think this is, you were on a commission before being on the council, Anna, and you just described, their they had a charge, and yet they also had procedures, and those procedures were well publicized and so forth. So it seems to me that before we spend a lot of time speculating, if you will, on how we should proceed, we need to get prior documents, and we need to, if there's legal opinions that are in writing, and then we also need to ask for the presence of some other individuals at our meeting.
Yep. Thank you. And you read my mind a little, and I appreciate you getting the jump start there. Counselor Ryan?
Yeah, I think this suggestion, is definitely worth exploring. It might be a win across the board. It might allow us to meet the concerns of the Human Rights Commission, and would create a situation where changes going forward could be done much more quickly and efficiently. If this stays as a bylaw, which it may do, but if it stays as a bylaw, things will always take a long time to change, including procedures, which seems kind of crazy. So it would benefit, I think, the commission. And so I think we should explore that option and see if it's possible. And then in our work, we could sort of work towards that goal if that's what we want to do. Otherwise, we stay with the bylaw structure and we'll work with that. We definitely need to hear from the attorney if there are any existing documents that we could look at, that'd be helpful. But I think that's what we need to do. We need to set our path, and then we definitely want to get on it as soon as possible and as quickly as possible.
Okay. Lynn, I'm going to go to you, and then I'm going to talk about what I think I've got our next steps as. So, Lynn?
Along with all of that, I think there's an issue where we need to look at what is the expectation of the amount of town resources to be dedicated to this. And the reason I bring that up is because without going into detail, Ronnie is aware of this. About a year or two ago, I had to intervene in an issue. I have to be so careful how I talk about this. Intervene in a case that came to the Human Rights Commission because it overlapped with the responsibilities of the council. And in doing so, it meant bringing in an outside consultant and a lot of other time, if you will, of the council, and eventually an executive session of the council. And the issue was resolved. But I'm just saying that, and that was just one case. So I think anything that we look at in a council, even though financial is not part of the purview of this committee, we need to be able to answer that question of what is the financial expectation of the town, both in terms of actual dollars and commitment of personnel, and which translates to dollars.
Can I clarify? You mean to the commission?
Yes.
Okay.
So in other words, if one of the main things here is the director of DEI becomes a major player, if you will, in reviewing and implementing and so forth, how much of her time is she spending on this, and in how many instances does she have to in fact bring in outside resources, and what does that cost? And by the way, this particular issue involved the towns, the government of the town of Amherst. So it was absolutely under the purview of the town. So
okay. And within that, I think the question is also, would shifting this to be a bylaw change that, from being a bylaw change that at all, right? Okay. All right, Ronnie? Oh, there you go. You're muted. No question. Okay. Councillor Cano Martin?
Yeah, I just have a question for Ronnie, because you sort of were describing how the complaints are being handled and what the approach is. in terms of, trying to, come to a solution and, some form of like mediation or, it sounded similar to what is set forth in this proposed bylaw. So I just wondered, is what is written here sort of codifying what you're already doing to some extent?
Ronnie?
Yes, it is. That is what we're doing. There's no mediation, as I mentioned. I've often thought that mediation would help us a lot, but since there's no budget for it, there hasn't been. In the case that Lynn mentioned, of course, the town was involved and she had to get involved and the town council had to get involved. And I think there were costs, I believe there were costs associated with it. I do think though that, I mean, when a resident faces a human rights violation to the extent that that person feels they have to go and file a complaint, it's not usually not some small thing, especially if it concerns the town. And you also have to think, do you want to allow space for the residents of Amherst to have a place to go? I'm glad that you all came to a resolution, but many of our complaints don't have a resolution, but it does help people feel heard. And there's a lot of value to that. And that I would urge you not to set that aside, because a lot of the people who come, are sort of, they're at the point where they have to complain. Nobody wants to go and expose themselves and have a discussion with the DEI about something. Most people don't. And there isn't right now a way. I can tell you, I myself don't think there's a way, if I wanted to complain about something that is a serious matter from the town of Amherst, that concerns the town, as Lynn pointed out. And you all have to think about, how is the town going to be credible to residents? And it seems to me there has to be a place to go, but not necessarily a place that can guarantee you a solution.
Okay. Thank you. All right, I'm going to take two more comments and then I do want to recap where I think we're at and make sure that we're all on the same page about that. So, Councillor Lord?
Thank you. My hand went up, went down because GOL, consistency, clarity, and actionability. But I guess we're getting clarity through this conversation, but I wasn't sure. All right,
We are
I'll keep
not,
going.
we are
We're
not
off
just
course.
clarity. No, we're not. So
Okay.
in this instance, we are not only looking for clarity, consistency, and actionability. We have been, we were charged to review this in total. So not just
Oh,
those
great.
things. That includes
Thank
a
you.
summative, or not summative, substantive, there we go,
All right.
substantive review.
Blame it on the head, the sinus
You're
infection.
totally fine. Happy to.
Um,
I appreciate you reminding us though, because if we ever are off track of clarity, consistency, and actionability, I will call on you for sure to remind us.
So I did have a comment though. I was
Yeah.
just putting it down because I was like, oh no. So thank you, Ronnie. That was part of what I was going to bring up. I know it's a lot of cost to the town or potentially, but I'm also like, what about the residents and where do they where can they go? Who can they turn to when these things happen? And more different, we see civil rights. And I'm just like, where do our people who don't have access to lawyers and other things go? So I'm grateful that we have HRC, but this is a bigger conversation in the town council. And just thank you, Ronnie, for bringing that up and all the work you do.
Thank you. And to be clear, I absolutely don't think anyone is in any way trying to minimize the work of the HRC at all. I think a lot of this conversation is about how do we make sure that y'all are able to respond without us having to go through 18 bylaw changes every time. Councillor Cano Martin?
Yeah, I mean, based on Ronnie's response to my question, I am sorry, I didn't mean to say mediation. I meant to say voluntary conference or reconciliation, which is what's in the in the proposed bylaw. So if it is really sort of codifying, the practices that you have been building up and using, I guess I do think I would be on the side of maybe not putting that in a bylaw and having that, but I would be on the side of having that available to the public as much as possible, on the website and other places and posted and ideally in, as many languages as we can so that people are aware of that. And I think it is truly valuable for people to have like a place to go. And part of what I see that you do is you make referrals as well. So even if it's like maybe this is not the best place for you to go, but here is where I can send you. So as a first point of contact for someone who feels like their rights have been violated, I think that is just really valuable, and just having that information out there to the public about who they can go to and what the procedure is.
Thank you. All right, so I want to rehash. Sorry, my wife is bringing me a seltzer because I finished mine already. Thank you so much. And I'm trying to hydrate better. All right, so shout out, Mina. Thank you very much. Okay, so I want to rehash what I've got in my notes so far to make sure that I've captured it, because I'm going to reach out to Paul. And what initial questions from Paul, and what I'm going to see if Paul is willing to do is come to one of our meetings. We're going to have to look at the calendar a little bit because we're starting to get a little jammed in here, but initial questions from Paul. We are asking for more detail about what was suggested or what comments were made by KP Law, and what was incorporated and what was not. We're asking for any insights he might have as to whether. Nope, sorry, we answered that question. This is why I'm going through my notes. What is the expectation of the amount of town resources to be dedicated to the HRC? And would shifting this to be a separate charge versus a bylaw change that amount at all? Kind of what are the impacts on staff and budgets? Does it make sense to establish the HRC as a charge, in his opinion, versus a bylaw, and allow them to establish their own policy? And we're going to see if both Pamela and Paul could join us, and then we'll also try to compile our questions for KP Law. That was a really messy summary, but basically my notes are a mess. We're asking for any prior documentation and prior legal opinions that he might have. We're asking what he thinks about the option of making this a charge versus a full bylaw, and the history of the creation of this. Does that sort of capture it? Counselor Ryan, what did I miss?
Not so much what you missed, but just that sounds like a pretty good summary, at least according to what I'm seeing here. Others may have some other things to add. But I think we need to be clear on, if we're going to ask Paul and the director to come in, we need to be clear, or I'd like to be clear on what we're going to ask them. I think, so what questions do people have in mind? Because it sounds like if we were given the go-ahead to pursue this as a bylaw, which I hope we will, and if that makes sense to the committee, and if we're given some kind of input as to what some of the issues were in a written document, or something that we could dig our teeth into, what were some of the concerns they had, we could get started. Why would we bring in Paul? Why would we bring in the director? What are the questions we want to ask them?
Great. Okay, let's get our list going, because there's nothing I hate more than a meeting that could have been an email, and so I want to make sure that we've gotten our questions clarified and that they're not just things that we could get email responses to.
Yeah.
So first question, we've got what was suggested and approved versus denied in terms of KP Law comments. So what were the legal concerns, which were accepted, which were rejected? Is that good first question? Okay, well, order doesn't matter. Second, what is the expectation of the amount of town resources to be dedicated to the HRC, and would shifting this to be a charge versus a bylaw change that amount? And then just in their opinion, does it make sense to establish HRC? Are there any as a charge versus, or shift this to be a charge versus a bylaw? Are there any concerns with that? Are there other questions that we want to ask of Paul and Pamela?
And my thought is that would not require them to be physically present.
I am inclined to agree with you.
And now if they say, oh, definitely we want to be there, or if we can think of other questions, if other committee members think that it would be helpful to have them here to have specific questions to address to them, ideally in advance, but at least then we should bring them up now. But I'm thinking that right now we don't need to have them come unless they insist, or unless we come up with better questions that require their presence.
And they're always welcome, but yes, agreed. Ronnie, your thoughts on this?
if they're not coming, there is a document you want to be sure you get, and that is a comparison that the DEI director did of the old bylaw and the new bylaw. So she goes through it point by point and says, this is what was, this is what we're proposing. So you might want to be sure you get that. And if you'd like, I can ask her and get it to you, or the town manager would definitely have it, because I think she did it for him last year, or maybe even the year before, but there was one that she did that was quite detailed.
Thank you. And we do have both documents, but it sounds like that's more of an explanation of the changes versus just a comparison. Is that right?
Right, it's a matrix of before, after, with each point of law, or whatever those things are called, each point of substance compared from before and after.
Okay, great. All right. So I'm just making sure I got it. All right, so I'm going to email Paul because, as a reminder, we cannot ask staff to do things. We ask Paul. So and if Paul chooses to pass that on, that's his prerogative. So I'm going to ask Paul what was suggested and approved versus denied in terms of KP Law suggestions. What is the expectation of resources? I'm rehashing these. His opinion on shifting this to be a charge, and ideally Pamela's opinion as well. And can we have any prior documentation that might be helpful for us, including a comparison of the changes and explanation of the changes from the DEI director? Okay. So I want to just outline where I think this is going to go. I will ask for this information. Paul will get it back to us as soon as possible, I'm sure. Looking ahead, we might we will have to continue to tackle this in some way on March 10th, but it might take a little bit longer to shift this into being a charge. And we have our finance committee interviews on March 10th. So we have to report back to the council by, where's my carryover memo? I just had it open. We have to report back to the council on this by March 23rd. And so I think, oh my God, when do we meet? I think that we only have March 10th. Is that right? Yeah, so our initial report back to the council will likely be, this is the progress that we've made so far. This is the angle that we're going. We're going to continue to work on it. That'll probably be our report, but I'll have the committee confirm that on the 10th probably. When I hear back from Paul, I will place any relevant items in the packet for our next discussion, and we'll keep on with this. And I appreciate how this discussion has gone. I think I didn't really know where to start, and so I'm grateful for everybody kind of coming together to muddle through, and I see a path, which I'm pleased with. Are there any other questions about this process? We'll continue. Ronnie, I want to thank you very, very much for having the foresight to join us. And to, again, when I said I didn't know what the path was, I truly didn't know what the path was. So thank you very, very much. And I hope you'll continue to join us, and anyone else from the HRC is welcome as well, as we go through. I might just, as we go through, I will try to kind of, we'll get all of the opinions from the HRC, and then depending on how many folks show up, if it's too unwieldy, we may need to kind of button it down and then open it back up for questions as we go, so that we don't get stuck in a loop. But we'll be sure to keep you all in communication as we go. So thank you.
Thank you for your work.
Oh, thank you, Ronnie.
Good.
Thanks
you
for being
your
here,
work.
Ronnie.
All right. I'm going to move us along on our agenda to the bylaw review committee charge, and let's open it up. Hang on. 210. It's like we just met. Okay. And I'm going to share my screen. Was 210 the last time we did this? Oh my God, when did we meet? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
that
was.
is right. Thank you. I'm like, what day is it anymore? Okay. So I just want to make sure I'm opening the right version so I don't repeat work here. We got really far last time. And I want to just look back through this and see where we're going. We want to look at reports. We can revisit charge. But I think we got pretty dang close to completion on that. But let's take a minute, have everybody read through the report section, and then we'll take it from the top to finish it up from there. I'm getting I truly am saying this just to hopefully someday get a gold star sticker from Athena that I wrote a report that is adequate for the council. So I'm getting my report notes open. All right.
I'm gonna run to the store and grab some gold stars. Just
Good
Thank-
luck. Good luck
in
getting a gold star
anticipation.
from Athena. Good luck.
I'm stressed about it. And I'm pretty sure I owe her and Amber one already. So will you take a campaign sticker? Okay. Councilor Ryan, let's go ahead and start with you.
So we're in the report section. And the question I have, which is probably a stupid question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Why 2 reports? Why not just 1 report? Why not just a final report? This committee's going to have enough work to do. I think we had a similar sort of issue with the Charter Review Commission where we got 2 reports, but as my fuzzy memory is they kind of all came all at once at the end. So what's the rationale or logic behind 2 reports? It seems 1 report preceded by extensive, like a public forum, public hearing, whatever, is sufficient. But maybe there's very good reason why we need 2.
I'm gonna share my own thoughts on this and apologize for not, if that's okay, Lynn. I will say I think that the time between the reports we got from Charter Review was supposed to be longer. I think we were delayed in receiving those reports when we did, and so there wasn't a lot of time between them, but there was supposed to be more. I believe that the idea is if we receive a preliminary report, then we're able to provide feedback on it, so that we're not necessarily doing as many intense changes towards the end. And I don't want to totally compare this all the time with Charter Review. I think it is the closest comparison, but I think we're doing now a lot of discussion on a final report. And if we can space out an initial report and a final report and give initial feedback, it might make it a cleaner process to get to the end and have already been able to provide some thoughts on initial recommendations. That's my gut reaction, is that there should be time between and there should be feedback, a feedback mechanism provided on that initial report. Lynn?
All of that's true. In fact, I think the basic thing is that the preliminary report summarizes what they've heard from the public, and then there's a check back with the public to see if that captured it. So it's a mechanism of communication.
Right. George, sorry, Councilor Ryan.
And my concern is that they are going to have their hands full. This is an extraordinarily complicated document. They're going to be asked to do an enormous amount of work. And that's just a given. And I don't quite see, I still don't, I'm not convinced by either of the reasons that have been presented to this moment. They do their process. They have opportunity for public to weigh in. This is all a public process. It's all transparent. It's all governed by open meeting law. And then they produce their report. And then the council has 3 months, the 90 days, I believe, is the essentially 3 months to act on it. And it would seem that 3 months is more than enough time for the council to do its review and come back if it had questions, and then finally act. I guess my argument here is to try and keep their task as focused as possible. Their job is extensive, and it will be public, and there will be outreach, I'm sure. But it's their job, and that we're asking them to do this. And having them produce 2 reports seems to be adding to their burden, which is already pretty burdensome. So I'm still not convinced. And I'd like to ease their burden a little bit and also ease the process. So the final report comes to us. I assume it gets sent to GOL for review. And then it goes to the council right? So I assume that's the process, if I'm not mistaken.
It
So,
could,
I'm sorry?
Oh, I apologize. It doesn't have to be that way, I don't believe, but Athena will let us know. Athena?
We haven't done this before, so it's brand new, just like the charter review process is new to us. I think a big question in my mind about how the process will work is how finished a product the committee will produce at the end of their work. So, what the charter review committee produced wasn't items that were ready to place on a ballot or special legislation language, but that needed more consideration by the council. If the bylaw review committee comes to the council with a list of bylaw amendments ready to vote on, then maybe it's less likely that the council will choose to send it to GOL because there will be less of a need for review of clarity, consistency, and actionability, and perhaps it will already have been reviewed by the town attorney. It's difficult to know at this point what their product will be, but I would hope that it's more final than less, so that the council that 90-day deadline is really easy to meet because what they're asking the council to do is really clear and ready.
May I ask you, Athena, if you have a view one way or the other on whether a preliminary report would make that very laudable goal more likely, or whether, in fact, given your experience, basically saying, look, you produce one report, make it as, as humanly possible in a form that could be enacted. That's your goal. That's what you're aiming towards. Do you feel, if you have a view on this at all, whether a preliminary report actually would be useful, helpful, valuable, either for the committee or for the council?
Again, I think it depends. In my mind, if the committee were to come to the council saying, we're considering making changes to these specific bylaws for these reasons, would you support those changes? And the council said yes to these, no to these. And then the committee went ahead and considered, made those final recommendations on the changes that the council indicated support. I mean, that all makes sense. But if the process is more similar to what the Charter Review Committee did, where it was getting in a report, the council didn't really have an opportunity to give
Feedback.
feedback that influenced the committee's work in any
Right.
way. So it's going to be an interesting process doing this for the first time. I don't think it's a bad idea to have a preliminary report because it does give the council an opportunity to weigh in on the committee's work. I mean, I think excluding that doesn't allow the committee to have that check-in point. It doesn't allow the council to have that check-in point during the committee's deliberations. And like I said, ideally, that would be more of a check-in point and not just submitting a report and not really giving time for consideration.
Thank you. Counselor End of that. Okay, Counselor Cano Martin.
Yeah, I was just going back to the first page of this and I was rereading the part where it said that we had to act within 90 days, assuming that's the final report. And just thinking about this charter process that we're in right now and how challenging that 90 days is proving with the 22 recommendations. And I'm guessing that this will come up with a lot more than 22 because there's so many bylaws. So I actually do see the advantage to having some kind of preliminary report, because then maybe as a council we can start looking at it together and being like, even doing some straw polls like Mandy Jo's been doing, because I could see it be so overwhelming for it all to come to us and then have to act in 90 days. So that's one use I see of it. And then the other thing I just wanted to flag is if we are going to ask them to have the amendments in with proposed language, to make sure that we give them some kind of budget to work with legal, because I'm assuming I don't know if we can assume that there's people with legal expertise.
Yeah, and as we were talking, I put this in to hopefully discuss it with everybody. I'm not obviously I'm not saying this is a thing. Also, the word straw poll is becoming, but I think that I wasn't sure. I agree generally. I think we talked about this a little bit with access to, I think where were we talking about this? Maybe we just talked about it in person with the idea of a budget for legal.
If I could interject, Anna,
Please.
the committee wouldn't need an appropriation for review by KP Law. The Charter Review Committee did ask for an appropriation because they wanted to consult with the Collins Center.
Right.
So if this body feels that the Bylaw Review Committee is going to need an appropriation for any of its activities, then that's something that you could recommend along with the charge, and that could go to the town manager, either potentially for an appropriation. I guess it would be before the FY27 budget. But you wouldn't need an appropriation for KP Law.
Thank you. I do. My follow-up question to that is, if they don't, great that they don't need an appropriation for legal, question mark is, do we need, how do they access it? And are we in the charge giving them access, or is that something that they need to come to us to receive, if that makes sense?
Access to KP Law?
Yeah. Like,
No,
do
that
they
would just
need it?
be that would just be in the course of its business. So just like this committee,
Perfect.
we need a legal review of a proposed bylaw,
Yep.
then we communicate that to KP Law, and so we would work that out with the committee at what point we would want that legal review so that the committee has an opportunity to consider the input from KP Law and then make its final recommendation. So in my mind, that would happen, later in the process. But we
Yep.
would just work it out with me and Steph.
Great. Thank you. And that's why we included the town attorney in the charge here. I just wanted to make sure it was in there. Counselor Ryan.
So if we do go with the preliminary report, if we go with two
Mhm.
reports, does it make sense to put some kind of suggested date for the preliminary report? Or do we just leave it, we want a preliminary report and we want a final report, and you have 1 year. Now we know we can extend it, no problem. But do we want to put a date in? Do we want to just leave it on just, two reports? I assume a preliminary report would not have to be given to us when they've completed all their work. It would just be sort of, here's where we're at X date, and here's some of the things we're considering. It wouldn't be a final report, it would be a preliminary report. So if you set a date and we just say by this date, we'd like to have a report from you, or no?
I I I'm inclined to agree with you in terms of I'd like there to be a gap between them so that there can be feedback, time for feedback. I'm trying to figure out the best way to do that. We have the option of saying with ample time for consideration and keeping it really broad, or we can say 2 months or 1 month or whatever it is. I think we've got on average of two council meetings a month. This likely would, based on how the charter is going, need a special meeting if we're getting council feedback in the same way that we're doing for charter with straw polls and the like. The other option is to say, not give a specific date, but councilors just give the feedback on their own time and prerogative. So I think we've got options there if we choose to, and they range from very, very fuzzy to a bit more exact. That's not a helpful comment that I just made. Sorry. That was like a nothing burger of a comment. Athena?
If only
Sorry.
everything we said was really important. I have so to the point that I was making earlier about the purpose of the preliminary report, I mean, this is asking for recommended changes to the general bylaws, and if the if the idea here is for the committee to get input from the council on its direction, that seems like a fairly baked recommendation, a report point. So in my mind, it makes more sense to have a preliminary report with bylaws being considered for amendment and the reasons for those considerations rather than specific recommendations yet.
Hmm.
So the preliminary report is, these are the bylaws that we've identified we want to, eliminate, amend, or create. This is the reason that we want to eliminate, amend, or create them. And then gauge the council's support of those different bylaws. And then that final report is, this is the recommendation. These are the specific recommended changes. In my mind, that makes more sense than asking for recommended changes and then recommended changes, including a comparison.
Okay.
So I think what Athena is saying is, yeah, preliminary report noting which bylaws are being recommended for a change and why, but not the specific language until the final, right?
I was more just saying if it was done, may
Oh,
as
if it's
well. Um, uh, I mean, maybe it's unnecessary. It's more of just like if they have it, they could include it, but maybe it's better to keep it preliminary. Um, we can definitely take that back. Sorry, Counselor Ryan?
No, and this eliminates the notion of a date. It just, I mean, ideally, they know they have a year. So
Right.
rather than putting a date, which is probably meaningless, October, November, whatever, or 2 months before. If we have this, I think Athena's suggestion makes sense, telling them what we're looking for. That's what we really care about, is we get something that we can actually work with rather than just meeting a deadline. So that then justifies or answers my question, why do we need a preliminary report? Because we're going to get a report that tells us prior to the final report what they're what they're thinking of recommending, what things, I don't have the language, I can't read it on the screen, but noting which bylaws are being recommended for changes and the rationale for those changes. And then you're adding,
So,
yeah, go ahead.
no, I apologize. Go ahead.
Well, now it's just a matter of language and wordsmithing, which I think is important. I don't know if Councilor Kenna Martin or Athena anybody wants to touch this up, but I like this. I think this is meets my concern, and I think could potentially be very helpful. We just need to make sure the language is what we want.
Okay, so we're talking about the preliminary report. They're coming to us. The reason why I think I want something like this, and I'm not wedded to this exact language, but I want to at least know the direction that they want to change it, right? Like and not just these are the ones that we want to change, but roughly how. And that's not great language to put into a charge. So
You're looking for
That's what I
rationale?
meant.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
sorry?
that's what I meant. So which bylaws are being recommended for changes in what way?
is that enough?
But without maybe the specific language. Say for example, there's a bylaw, we just need to change a couple words for it to make sense. Sure, they can include that in the report. But if there is more extensive amendments that need to be made and they know in what way they want to change it but don't have the specific language, then I think that's the kind of thing that I'm
Yeah.
Realize also it's not just bylaws that are being recommended for, well, I guess change covers everything, including just eliminating.
Yep.
So I guess that's the point. It's not just, okay, it covers everything. Okay.
So when we read this, does rationale include the direction piece?
yeah.
I would think so, yes.
All right. We have different definitions of that. No, I'm just kidding. All right. So I'm going to delete this piece. So preliminary report noting which bylaws are being recommended for changes and rationale behind said changes. This doesn't feel like the end of a sentence.
Right.
Noting which bylaws are being recommended for changes and
The rationale for
Rationale.
such change,
yeah.
for said changes, yeah. I always like to use said. That's always great.
Why not? Sounds fair. Lynn?
Yeah, let me give you an example because it's also includes a point I want to make. And that is that I would hope to see the net zero energy bylaw on this list. And the reason I would want to see it on the list is because we've actually now built a building using that bylaw. And I think we've learned things from it. But the reality is that this committee is not necessarily the people who have the expertise to change a bylaw about net zero energy. So there also has to be a period of consultation with staff and other experts. So, I mean, for example, in that case, they, I don't know who all they might want to consult with, but certainly they would want to bring in, it would be more than people that are just on the committee and people who would randomly show up in the public. Okay.
Thank you. So with this, get my little comment away. Straw poll. Are folks feeling comfortable about this preliminary report bullet point? Just starting there with this being the preliminary report. So we've gotten that. We can give feedback as a council. They can seek because Lynn, to your point, they could have sought that prior to the preliminary. They can continue to seek it after, but this will help to kind of firm that up. Then, they'll obviously do all of that within 3 weeks, and then they come back. Doesn't matter. However much time they need to take. Then they come back. I was joking about the 3 weeks. I was going to say 3 days to make it really clear that it was a joke. So then they come back with the final report. If the final report includes recommended changes to the general bylaws, I threw in including proposed language for changes. That does not need to stay. I just wanted to throw it in for discussion, including and a comparison of all recommended changes to the present language in the bylaws and reason for recommendations. Will we, as a council, be able to have robust discussion without rehashing everything and approve those changes? Or is there something else that we're going to need in order to have good discussion? Does this encompass everything that we might need? I want to make sure we're setting them up for success here, if that makes sense, and getting a report that's going to be useful for us. Athena, you unmuted, but I'm not sure if that was a...
Oh, sorry, I did. George can go ahead.
Okay. Counselor Ryan?
Sorry. I want to look just at the final report bullet point,
Yep.
including proposed language for changes. I thought we had something, maybe Athena had something more concise or more precise in the sense that I think we want something in the form that could be adopted as a bylaw.
George, I started writing that and then I paused because I got nervous. So that is the language that we typically use for introducing measures is in the form necessary for adoption. We could do that instead.
I thought that's what Athena was suggesting. Can't speak for her, but I thought that I was hearing that in the best of all possible worlds, we'd like them. So you might even say where appropriate or where possible, but anyway, we'd like it in the form, I think, necessary for adoption. So, but maybe that's not possible. Maybe it's asking too much.
Well,
But
let's put it in here and talk about it.
yeah, exactly.
Athena?
I think, like George said, in a perfect world, that is what you would have from this committee. You would have changes in the form necessary for adoption that you could then act on. You would need very little, you wouldn't need referral to committees and so on because you would have that information. The question you asked, Anna, about, what else does the council need in order to make that decision? It's really hard to imagine all the changes that they're going to review and propose, but making sure that you include that in here, I think is important so that the council is well-heeled to act on the changes if they're in the final form. So if you all think that the council ought to have a summary of public input or, memos prepared from who like thinking about how you'd like the information included in the report that will allow you to make a decision, what kind of summary of public input or what kind of summary of process, or what kind of summary of the feedback received from different people and committees. I think, being specific about what you want from them here will make your job easier in the future.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to put this on a new bullet point just for the time being. We'll come back to it. But so let's think about that as in terms of what else would be in there. Thinking, and I'm using charter, like Athena just mentioned, summaries of feedback, overview of processes utilized. What else? Counselor Ryan, or you don't want any of this?
I'm still thinking about that, but I'd like to strike where possible. I kind of like Athena's point as I take it. This is what we expect, and if they don't do it, well, what can we do? But this is what we'd expect. We'd like it in the form necessary for adoption. And the rest of this, I agree. If we'd like just a sort of an overview of the process they followed. Summary of public input, I think, is basically, feedback received is fine. I don't know. I can't think of anything else, but what else would people like to read?
Outreach efforts, summary of outreach efforts.
Okay.
If
Summary
that's something.
of outreach and public input or public feedback, or feedback received is fine. Yeah. From the pub for both. Yeah.
And everybody else, I don't know how to, and relevant parties.
Yes.
Thank you.
That leaves out the irrelevant parties. How come they don't get a chance to?
They get a separate appendix that is
Okay,
sent
all right.
directly
Yeah,
to me, and
that's
I
where I would
frame
be.
it.
Okay.
I love that feedback. All right. How are we feeling about this?
I feel like it's getting where it needs to be.
Right.
I think this committee can write a mean charge. That's all I'm saying.
Well, we're
Um,
getting there. So, now, what about the last bit here? Final report must be submitted.
yeah,
Why is it a bullet point? Or it's a
because I
separate
needed
thing?
to separate it out
Okay,
because I,
fine.
I
Yeah.
couldn't keep
Right.
typing in the middle of a paragraph.
Okay. Final must be reported to submitted to town council 1 year. Okay.
I just want to make sure that yeah, okay, we do. So, hey, guess what? We're at the end. That's great, except for this part would have to change. Date. Wait, no, this would be the new charge, right? This is a
Yeah.
new
Yes.
New date.
I panicked for a moment. Um, and I'll update the footer too. But so I want to take a second and run through this from the get-go because we had some discussions. Um, we talked about the original committee was 3. That feels wild to me, in terms of the amount of work necessary. So let's run through it from the top before we do any voting on this. Read through, please, the top part before the line and raise your hand if you have any concerns or questions. Oh, what's wrong?
I do have a question. The original committee that met prior to the council being sworn in was 3.
Yeah.
Was the original committee after that also 3, or was it 5?
No, it was more.
I think it was
The one
5
that,
at least.
yeah, I think so. I think the one that included counselors, I think it was
Yeah.
5.
Okay.
All right. Any concerns with this first piece of the charge?
No.
No,
Okay. Composition.
it's fine.
Okay. Background we've talked about is pretty set because that's charter,
Mhm.
and we're not changing that part of the charter as far as I know. Purpose.
Yeah, I have a whole bunch of concerns here, if you don't mind.
I deeply mind, but go ahead.
Sorry about this. I'd like to suggest that we order it in terms, it probably doesn't matter, but I'd like to order it in what I consider, but you may not all agree, sort of the most important or most prominent down through. All of them matter, but I think it'd be nice to start with the third bullet point.
Hang on, George. You're one ahead of me real quick. I think because you're in the charge bullet points. Is
Oh,
that
I'm
right?
sorry. I'm
You're
sorry. Talking
totally
about the
fine. I
charge.
I just want to
Yeah,
make sure there's no other issues. This is a one sentence
sorry.
thing. Nope,
Sorry.
you're fine. Okay, let's get into it. So, George, please carry on.
Well, first thought is I'd like to put the third bullet point at the top, because I think that's the main first thing we want to just highlight. Their job is to review the bylaws, to determine whether they are serving their intended purposes, comma, are internally consistent, comma, aligned with mass state law, comma, and are relevant and in accordance with best practices, period. And I would delete the rest.
All right.
They don't need to be told that they're going to have to make recommendations. They already know that. It's already in there. I would say, the first thing we want them to do is this. Or right.
Is
So I
there
would put- yeah.
any opposition to deleting this highlighted piece here? What it would be?
No.
Okay.
It seems fine to me as well because we say it right up here in the purpose. Okay, go ahead, George.
Then I think number 2 is as it is. It would be actually the third, consult with appropriate staff, comma, relevant town committees, comma. I think you're missing a comma there. So again, consult with appropriate staff, relevant town committees, the town attorney, and members of the public.
Okay.
And then I was going to put the lenses, examine bylaws with an equity lens, examine bylaws with a climate lens, and then the final would be back to raise public awareness. And I want to talk about that with you all and see maybe we'll leave it, maybe we won't. And then we have at the end, consider how bylaws support an engaged and informed community. So again, you would argue perhaps that that's the other lens or the other way we'd like them to look at this. So maybe it should stay. At first reading, I thought this is kind of repeating what the very first bullet point, raise public awareness. But on reflection, I thought, well, no, it's saying we want you to look at these 3 things we'd like you to keep in mind equity lens, climate lens, and how our bylaws support an engaged, informed community. So perhaps that probably should stay. I think it's back to the first one. And I just for a moment, a little bit more discussion about what it says and what we're asking them to do. We certainly expect them to engage the public, right?
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, and beyond that, raise public awareness of and community engagement in the bylaw review process. And simple to my mind, simple and short and sweet is best. Let them figure out how they want to do it. But right now, what we're saying is various community outreach efforts, okay, and feedback mechanisms, a term I really don't really like, but that's all right, and analyze community feedback prior to preliminary and final reports. It seems like we're getting into the weeds here. What I guess what we're trying to say is raise public awareness and communicate with the public, reach out to the public. That in itself seems okay. The rest of it, I think, is just a lot of verbiage and kind of getting into the weeds. That was my thought.
Okay.
And I would actually, I would put that final bullet above the one above public awareness, because I think those kind of go together. These are three things we'd like you to keep in mind as you do this. And by the way, please engage the public.
Thank
Right.
you.
And I would propose striking maybe after outreach efforts, just the rest of it, feedback mechanisms, analyze community feedback prior. Let's not, they'll do what they're going to do. We are asking them in the final report to summarize what they've heard from the public, and to describe the process. And that seems to be more than sufficient. So I would like to leave it at that.
Any thoughts on this change to strike the last piece?
I agree.
Counselor Lord, Counselor Kenna Martin, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just pondering this for a moment about um could we still add back the feedback mechanisms? Because I don't know, like I just like there's something in my brain that when I hear outreach, I think of in person, and I know that might not be correct, but I just want to
Mhm.
make it clear that like it could be an online survey, it could be,
Mhm. Mhm.
it doesn't
Okay.
have to be face to face.
I agree with that, and I also think that yeah, feedback mechanisms, in my mind, more clearly opens a door to things like surveys or
Yeah.
anything other than a listening session. Um, but I agree, George, the other pieces feel redundant given that the expectation seems clearly stated in the reporting section. Thank you, Counselor Kenna Martin.
Yeah, I have no objection to that. Again, my deeper concern is that we want them to focus. They have a really big task in front of them. And I don't want them to be spending hours and hours constructing complicated, you know, uh, outreach tools. But good. Let's leave that then. And if we just strike the last bit, that's fine by me.
Okay. So we're looking at this. Um, all right. Any other comments on the charge piece? Counselor Ryan, it's a residual hand, I'm assuming?
It's a clap. It's a hand of praise. No, really, you guys are doing a good
Well,
job.
as long as there's all five fingers are up there.
No, that's good. They're all five.
All right. Reporting. Um, any any thoughts on the reporting? I'm gonna accept our changes just so that it's a little easier to read because I think we've made it messy enough here. I don't know what that was. That's Nicole.
Can tell this committee is a fan of the Oxford comma.
I love the
Apparently, yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
when I
That's
still
just an
have.
observation.
Oh yeah,
You can make a
I wanted
case if you want. We could have a long debate about it. It's
I
no.
know.
I will use my privilege as chair to say no. Absolutely not.
it's
My
the dictatorship, yes.
when I had a Twitter bio, it used to be like big fan of the Oxford comma. Like that was how I identified first and foremost. Okay, so with that, are there any other, do folks want to sit with this for any more time? Or are we feeling ready to maybe possibly get to the point where I need to actually write something else in my report? Hang on. And we're recommending this for adoption, correct?
Yes,
Yes. And
Thank
as soon as the council adopts the charge, then you can get started on
yes,
interviewing people and making appointments.
yes.
Amazing. More interviews. Okay, so George, would you like to make a motion? Do you want me to make it and you can just say moved?
Why don't you make it and I will second it. Thank you.
I would, okay, that's even fancier. I move to recommend for adoption by the town council the charge for the bylaw review committee.
And I second that motion.
Thank you. Bylaw review committee. All right. I'm glad nobody on this committee has the same initials. I'm going to call the vote. Counselor Cannon Martin,
Aye.
Counselor Ryan,
Aye.
Lynn Griesmer,
Aye.
Counselor Lord,
Aye.
and I am an I. Can't remember if I said that already. All right. The motion passes unanimously. I will write my to adopt the bylaw review committee charge as my recommended language for the council, and we will call it a day. All right. Thank you all. So we've got 2 more things to do. Great work. Well done. Stickers all around. Next up, oh my God,
She's running out of stars, gang.
I got a Costco membership. I'll use it. Okay. Here we go. We're shifting to proclamations. It is 7:57. We are on track. I'm so proud of you all. All right, let's talk about the first off, Town of Amherst proclamation declaring April 2026 as Child Abuse Awareness and Prevention Month. Thank you to Councilors Griesmer and Haneke for sponsoring this. I will leave you for a moment to read while I make sure all my files are saved. Counselor Ryan. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. Speaking of commas, in the now therefore clause, we, comma, the Amherst Town Council, comma.
Awesome.
Thank you.
This is a relatively short one, so I'm not going to call out every line, but if there are any other edits in order to find this clear, consistent, and actionable, I'm just going to be finicky and write 9:00 a.m. without a space. All right. Is there, oh my God, I wasn't ready with my template. My template's not ready. Sorry, 1 second. Okay. Is there a motion to find the Town of Amherst proclamation declaring April 2026 as Child Abuse Awareness and Prevention Month clear, consistent, and actionable?
I so move.
Thank you.
Lord,
Thank
you.
you.
Oh, you had it.
And I
That's all
seconded
good.
it.
All good. All right. I'm going to call the vote. Counselor Cannon Martin,
Yes.
Counselor Ryan,
Aye.
Lynn Griesmer,
Aye.
Counselor Lord,
Aye.
and I am an I as well. All right. To adopt. Sorry, y'all these reports. I'm trying. Okay. Next one. Doing great. Cruising. If anybody needs a stretch break, you have 10 seconds to stand up and dance around. Counselor Ryan?
So I have a thought about this that when you're ready, after people have stretched, I would like to throw out there.
Okay.
before we begin the review.
All right. Everybody is going to be done stretching in 10 seconds while I try to find the dang thing that I'm trying to do. Oh, that's why. All right. Counselor Ryan, would you like to share your thoughts?
Well, it struck me that it might be possible, and I know at least one person I could reach out to, and I'd be happy to take the initiative. It would mean we wouldn't act on this today. And given the dates that I see in this document, it doesn't seem like it's something that has to be done in this meeting, though we may decide to do it anyway. But it would be, I think, personally, would be meaningful if we could actually list the names, if it's possible. Maybe it's not, of those who actually have received the Purple Heart who are Amherst residents. And Athena has her hand up. So Athena.
Don't let me cut you off,
Hold on.
George.
Well, I thought you were going to say, well, we've got that list, or no, we never could find it, or it's impossible. But my thought is that, and if it's not possible, that's the end of the discussion. But I would suggest to the sponsors that if they would be willing to include the names of the individuals who actually have received the Purple Heart, this would be, I think, a much more powerful statement. But that may not be possible. I do have someone I could reach out to who I think could help me find out if that's possible, but maybe somebody knows already that it is or isn't. But that was my suggestion. And if the sponsors, and we have one of the sponsors here this evening, if the sponsors are open to that, I would pursue that and then report back to them what I discover. So that's my suggestion, having read this.
Thank you. Athena?
You mean current or like living?
I would like to list, I mean, I don't know how many there are. Maybe there's so many that it just couldn't go in here. I just don't
Well,
know. I don't
depends
know
if
if you
you're
know.
talking about living recipients or
Is it, yeah,
but
right. It's not
anyway,
living, but I mean, right.
I'm sure Steve Connor, our Veteran Services agent, is
Exactly.
amazing and is in close contact with all the veterans in Amherst and does really great work with them. I actually suggested while we were looking at this the memo and the council action that in some communities they've petitioned the governor for a special, I think it's a commendation for the Purple Heart recipients. And I think that might be more appropriate than putting it in the proclamation, especially given the timeline. So I wonder if we could do that because that would give us time to consider something like that for August 7, if Steve were supportive of that or some other special recognition for the Living Purple Heart recipients in Amherst.
Possibly also for Veterans Day as the option there.
So yeah, I think the
August
thought
7
would
is
be,
Purple
yeah,
Heart Day.
I know. I was thinking if we couldn't get it, depending on when we can get it
Oh,
done.
right.
Lynn?
I was going to thank you for the changes you just made.
No problem. Yep, I just wanted to, yeah. So, all right. George, did you want to push to get that included in this? I mean, we do technically have time. It's February, but if
it's not my resolution. Maybe it's out of order, but my thought was that this would be more impactful if some sort of recognition of individuals by name in some form or other, whether they be current living members, if we reached out to Steve and sought his input, whether we reach out to the governor and ask for some special recognition, that would be, I think, and I'd be happy to help with that. But that's my thought.
So we've got an option here. We can, if you'd like to include it in this, we can wait on this. We could look at everything else about it and come back. Maybe we can't wait on it, but it seems like we could wait on it, unless there's another reason why we need to do it in March. Or we can do this and then look to another way of recognizing those individuals. Those are the two options we have today. Athena?
My thought is that this committee is looking at clarity, consistency, and actionability, and you can declare
You're
it clear,
right.
consistency, clear, consistent, and actionable. And then George and I and Steve and others can think about ways that we'd like to recognize the Purple Heart recipients and talk to Steve in the meantime.
Thank you. You are absolutely right. Okay. So with that in mind, let's look for clarity, consistency, and actionability. My first issue is that these are from the town council. And so I wanted to change this. Also, this isn't a phone number. So I'm going to change this to Amherst. I know how to spell Amherst. Town Council. I'm just gonna delete this and copy in the picture that I typically do, if that sounds okay. Maybe someday.
Yes, do it.
I'm trying. It's not listening to me. All right. Oh, it's because I have track changes on. Okay. So stop it. Okay. And then we typically do Town of Amherst proclamation declaring Mm, 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 mm. August 7th is Purple Heart Day. Oh no, proclaiming a Purple Heart community.
Yes.
Declaring Amherst. Is that redundant?
No.
Thank you. Okay. Starting at the top. Counselor Ryan. Nothing? No. Okay. Council sponsors. Counselors. And then we just do that. Oh no, we don't. Oh my God, my own rules. Sorry. Counselors Haneke and Griesmer. And as much as I love it, we don't need it if it's just two things. Counselor Kenna Martin, were you saying yes, I did? Was I wrong? Do I need an Oxford comma there?
I'm speaking to a child. Sorry.
Oh, no, I thought you were like even a more staunch defender of the Oxford comma. And I was like, I didn't think it was applicable for two.
No.
Community sponsor, town manager Bockelman. That's fine. Getting in here. Whereas the people of Amherst, Massachusetts have great admiration and the utmost gratitude for all residents of our community who have served in the armed forces. And whereas residents of Amherst have been wounded or killed in action while serving the armed forces and have been posthumously awarded. Well, so not really, not always. Sorry, I need to turn my track changes back on. Because Purple Hearts don't always have to be awarded posthumously. So I would take out ultimate too.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm not raising my hand. I'm not saying that I'm not raising my hand. I'm apologizing for not raising my hand. Sorry.
Okay.
It sounds like this whereas is in reference specifically to those who have been killed in action. It makes more sense without the changes if it's only about those killed in action. Residents who have been killed in action while serving in the armed forces have been posthumously awarded the Purple Heart for their ultimate sacrifice.
I am fine with that. For clarity's sake, I think that there needs to be a whereas that includes information or that because the Purple Heart isn't only given posthumously.
Right.
I'm trying to think about how to make sure that if that's the only paragraph about why it's given.
No, I'm saying that you could do another whereas saying residents have been wounded in action while serving and have been awarded the Purple Heart.
Fully agree. That was where I was trying to get to without using my words well. Lynn?
I probably Paul was the one that brought this to Counselor Haneke. And in the process, we might want to see whether or not for some reason they only wanted to recognize those that were killed in action, although I think that would be strange personally. I would prefer that we recognize all Purple Heart recipients.
Lynn, can I ask you if there is a time pressure on this as a sponsor that you know of?
No.
Does it make sense then to ask that question and bring this back to
Yes.
GOL? Because that also gives us a chance to ask George's question, and in terms of whether that makes sense to do in this or not. And even though I know that's not a clarity consistency thing, do we want to continue to look to see if there are any other questions? And I'll highlight this, and Lynn, I can send this to you. Question from GOL as to whether I'm not going to spell it out. It is intended only to highlight those who lost their lives. Whoop. Or, oh my God, the writing. if it should be dated. Line of duty. Okay. Oh my gosh. Send. Let's continue in case the other questions arise, and then I think that'll be our course of action here. Writing it in my report. Okay. Whereas the Purple Heart is the oldest. Um, um, okay. Whereas the heritage it represents. Wait, is that, sorry. Continue to read if something comes up, please let me know. I don't think that this is quite correct.
You mean as a matter of historical fact, or is just the way it's written?
Well, both maybe. I don't think that this is finicky. Sorry. I don't think merit is sewn on. I think that it's on the medal itself. Let me look it up.
Well, I think they're describing what happened in 1782.
That's what I'm trying to. That's what I was
Okay.
trying to
You think
figure
in
out if I'm
1782
reading.
they actually had a medal?
No. If I'm reading this wrong,
Yeah.
was created as the
With
badge of military merit.
merit.
Are they saying it is made of, or because it's not
No, it's saying
this
it
anymore?
was
If it was
original.
that.
It was
It was
originally
made of purple
created.
cloth.
Thank
Right.
you. Thank you.
So it's a bit of historical
You
detail.
could say was it originally or initially created as the badge? Oh, the before the other
I would
decoration
leave
yeah,
it.
was
Yeah.
initially.
Yeah. Because then it becomes it gets a different title. And
So initially it was the badge of merit. Yeah.
right, good.
Okay, thank you. Because it still says badge of military merit. That's what threw me. Sorry. Or for military merit, it says on the back. Okay.
Still today. Yeah. Okay.
I have a nitpicky question. Is it the badge of military merit or is it a badge of military merit?
The badge, I believe. I believe it is like the ultimate badge.
It was originally created as the badge, right?
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
But valid question. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So any other questions for my only thought is we talk a lot about I do think it could be nice to reference any local facts that we have at this point. And I think also I'm happy to work with the sponsors and sign on as a sponsor if you're looking, but I think that if there's any other, never mind. This doesn't matter.
I
I
have no
went deep into
reason.
the Wikipedia page, so that's on me.
Yeah, no, I just went to the same page. I think any other sponsors are more than welcome.
So I'm going to send this back to you and Mandy.
You can
And
send it to me too. I might try and track Steve down a little quicker.
yep, absolutely. Athena, I think I'm just going to figure out how to automatically CC you on just every email I send.
That's
No, I'm so sorry.
That's gotta be illegal, at least. Right.
Yeah, I know, but the
That's a
number of
form of
times I
harassment.
forget,
That's a form of
that's
harassment.
what it is. That's really what it is. Okay. All right, everybody. So with that, we have reached the end of our agenda. I want to just talk a little bit about upcoming coming attractions. Oh no, wait, we have one more thing. Sorry. I'm going to make a motion to approve the minutes of February 10th, 2026.
Second.
Thank you. Come on, hang on. And you know what? You'd think that the template would be ready to use at this point. Stop. Okay. Next to 10, 6. And I made that and Lynn seconded. Okay. And I'm going to call the vote. Counselor Ryan,
Aye.
Counselor Lord,
Aye.
Counselor Kenna Martin,
I
Lynn Griesmer,
Aye.
and I am an aye as well. It passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay. So, we have a meeting on March 10th where we are to conduct interviews for the Finance Committee vacancy. I have received one SOI thus far, and it will be placed in the packet as soon as the packet is posted. It's on SharePoint for folks who need it. And I have commitments from at least one, possibly two other people saying they will be sending their SOIs. I will send them a reminder. Those SOIs are due, I told them on the 5th so that we could get it in the packet for the Tuesday meeting. My plan is to start off the meeting with those interviews. I believe that technically the chair is supposed to ask the questions as per our policy. I would love to change that policy. But if someone would like to advocate for another system of asking the questions, that's fine. My plan is to, as per the policy for making appointments is to rotate through who answers the question first. I would encourage folks to take notes. We will be deliberating immediately after. Are there any questions about the interview process or anything like that? I believe I put the questions, interview questions and selection guidance in that SharePoint folder as well. If I haven't, I will make sure to do that immediately or as soon as possible. Counselor Kenna Martin.
do you mind resharing the link to that folder? I'm not seeing it in my either on my I don't know where I'm supposed to see the link actually. Sorry.
No, you're fine. I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't know how to share a link to it, but I will tell you how to get there in your Outlook, in your email. In the
Mm-hmm.
top left corner, there's like a bunch of dots. And if
Mm-hmm.
you click on that, it opens up all your options for Microsoft apps, and you'll
Okay.
see SharePoint there. And if you click that, you should see a town council folder, a GOL folder, and a whatever other committee or committees that you're on.
Counselor Kano Martin, I'll send a link right now.
Oh, thank you. That's great.
Athena, who knows how to do this, will send a link. Thank you, Athena.
You bet.
Did that answer your question, Counselor Kenna Martin?
Yes, thank
Awesome.
you.
Counselor Ryan.
As I said last meeting, and just a reminder, I will not be here on March 10th.
Thank you, and we will miss you dearly. And I'm sorry that you won't be there. Lynn?
I don't know that we can discuss this at this meeting, but at a future meeting, we should discuss an issue that Counselor Ryan brought up at the meeting of chairs and vice chairs, and that was that his report from the committee would serve as the minutes of the committee meeting. And Athena answered and basically said, I don't want to mimic it, but it was basically said that, a committee can decide what their minutes are. So can you give us a little more thought about that, Athena?
This committee, I'm writing your minutes as we go, so I don't.
Okay. I mean, that's fine. I found it a very interesting option, and I didn't know whether, Counselor Ryan, you were going to adopt that option for TSO or not.
I will say as chair, I'm very wary of that option because I am already nervous about missing something in my report, and maybe I'm making a weird ranking in my brain, but minutes feel much more formal and maybe they're not, right? The report is just as important, I suppose, as the minutes, but that makes me itchy. The idea of the reports being considered the formal minutes of the committee for myself as chair writing that report.
And the only reason I bring it up was because it was mentioned at that meeting, and I want to make sure that we do everything we can to support the submission of timely minutes.
Yep, absolutely. And Athena has been awesome at keeping those. I know it's because we're her favorite committee, but that's fine. Athena?
It's not that you're my favorite, it's that you're the best one.
Uh,
So
Ooh, I
notice
don't know how to sort of take
Interesting
that now.
distinction.
just kidding.
Sort
Whoa.
of a backhanded kind of
So
compliment.
the minutes, they include things that aren't included in reports. You only really have to report on recommendations to the council, and the summary and what's included there. It's not always the same as what's included in minutes. So my recommendation is to keep them separate.
Okay. Thank you.
I appreciate the idea though.
All right. So we will also have at our next meeting, we will likely have two more proclamations, resolutions. I'm working on Arbor Month, because I refuse to go back in time and have to approve one for a prior year again. And I think Lynn is working with other counselors on the Global Village Day.
Yes.
Okay, great. So we will likely have two more proclamations coming through to us, and who knows what else. And then we'll continue work. I think this is giving us enough time to get some answers on the HRC bylaw. So we'll continue work on that. I'd like to get HRC buttoned up before we open up
ROB.
ROB, thank you. Resident Oversight Board, just because I think sometimes having multiple things going at once can be tough, and I think that we can crank through HRC. This committee is cruising, so I'd like to button that up, and then we'll get into ROB. And the other piece that is wild and crazy that is coming up is, what is it? It's on my annual calendar. It's either goals or evaluation. It's one or the other. And so we will be getting into I know. It's in my calendar for April. Because I think it took me so long last time. Hang on, I'm opening up my personal notes. They're personal notes. Evaluation process. I have starting to talk about it in April. That's not Counselor Ryan. You picked GOL on your list of committees you wanted to be on. I want to be clear. It's not getting into the actual evaluation. This committee is working on the tool, and we want to give ourselves a lot of time to work on that tool. So we're going to start picking it up again in the spring. So just gird your loins. It's coming. Athena? Sorry.
Lynn has her hand up.
No,
Oh,
I'm sorry. No. I didn't take
Oh,
it.
okay.
Someone needs to kick me out of this meeting. Let's go. Okay, Athena, go ahead.
Did you already say rules of procedure?
I did not say rules of procedure.
Because
And
there was one suggested change that came through formally.
oh, I think I missed that. So thank you so much. I'm going to put that on either for the 10th or the 24th, probably the 24th.
And then also based on the council's discussion about the Charter Review Committee recommendations, I think there's a strong likelihood that some of those actions that the council takes on the 23rd include referral to GOL. So just wanted to also keep that on your
Yeah,
list of
that is
potential nightmares.
nightmares, insomnia, one or the other. So yeah, that'll be on for April as well. So we've got a packed spring, but I'm going to try to keep us as little overlap of things as we can to try to finish one thing and then the next. I think that helps us to not, it helps us to stay focused, honestly, versus having so much time between discussion and then little time on it. So please know I'm not intentionally pushing anything. I'm just trying to learn from my past years as chair. Counselor Ryan?
Just want to pick up briefly on your comment that now this committee is really cruising. That's almost verbatim what the captain of the Titanic said just before they hit the iceberg. So just be careful.
I look forward to all of the charter change recommendations, and I don't think that they're an iceberg. All right. I'm not gonna lie to you. I refuse to watch that movie because I know how it ends and I don't want to be sad. All right. Are there any other comments for the good of the committee? No. Okay. My only unrelated comment, I almost made this at counselor comments, but I was too tired, so I'm going to make it here at GOL. Counselor Ryan and I went to the same movie the other week, and I would like to just highly recommend it to anyone. It is about wastewater treatment plants, and it was called, what was it called? Something about the worst happening.
Unless something really terrible happens or
Unless
something.
something really terrible happens.
Right.
It was an excellent film, and I will hear no besmirching of it. And it reiterated the fact that wastewater treatment plant employees are doing some
Right.
really important work,
Thanks.
and
It's
deserve
well
all
worth
of our
seeing. It is well worth seeing.
respect.
It's
Yeah.
in Portland, Maine, by the way. It's not far from us either.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's quite good.
Very, very good film. So highly recommend. I don't think it's streaming anywhere because I was going to send
Not
it to
yet,
the
no.
council, but once it is, I will find it and send it out. That's my counselor comment. Unless there's anything else, I will take a motion to adjourn. Would anyone like to make that motion?
I move to adjourn.
Thank you. Is there a second?
My second.
Thank you. I'm going to call the vote. Counselor Lord.
Aye.
Thank you. And Counselor Lord, I hope you feel better. Lynn Griesmer.
Aye.
Counselor Ryan.
Aye.
Counselor Cano Martin.
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. Thank you all very, very much. Have a great evening. I'll see you on the 10th, and I'll add SOIs as soon as I get them to that folder. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thank you.